New details are emerging about the Texas church shooter. According to reports, a New Jersey plea deal from several years ago allowed the gunman to continue to own a firearm, despite him being charged with a felony gun offense. The gunman was arrested in 2016 in New Jersey after police found him with a 12-gauge shotgun, and he was subsequently determined to be mentally ill and unfit to stand trial. So my question tonight is this: isn't that enough to be adjudicated as unfit for a firearm? And why was the felony charge downgraded to a misdemeanor that allowed this man to have continued legal access to firearms? With me now to break this down, Amy Swearer, who is a senior legal policy analyst at the Heritage Foundation. Amy, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Amy, so there's actually two cases here. One happened in New Jersey, and one happened in Oklahoma, and I want to talk about what happened in New Jersey first. On September 12th of 2016, police arrested the shooter, who we don't name and we don't show pictures of as a policy, just so we don't sensationalize or give them notoriety that they want. But police arrested this shooter with a 12-gauge shotgun. He told them that he was homeless and taking pictures of interesting sights, or something psychotic here. He was charged with unlawful possession of a rifle and a shotgun, which is a third-degree indictable crime, which means essentially that it's a felony. But he accepted a plea deal the next year in January of 2017 that just found him guilty of criminal trespass, which is a misdemeanor. Why was this downgraded, and is this proper that this downgrade happened?
So it's unclear why exactly it was downgraded, except that what has since come out is this argument that, well, we found out maybe the shotgun wasn't immediately operable, something was missing from it, and so we decided not to charge them. I think under New Jersey law, that seems a bit fishy to me. New Jersey law seems to suggest it doesn't matter whether it was immediately operable, that this man was committing a felony. And so it appears that, especially given this guy's history of violent arrest, convictions for violent crimes that were later dropped to misdemeanors, his history of mental instability, that this should have been something New Jersey took much more seriously than just sort of wiping their hands of it and saying, okay, you know what, we'll plead you down to a misdemeanor, go on your way. Because realistically, this individual should still have been in a New Jersey prison if he had been convicted of that felony.
Right. And think about that situation. I mean, it's heartbreaking to think about that situation. He might not have been able to commit the crime. The people who he killed might still be alive to this day. And there's another layer of this. So that was in 2016 that he was arrested. In 2017, he accepted the plea deal. In Oklahoma, back in 2011, this same guy was charged with a felony assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. That's a pretty serious charge after attacking the owner of a donut shop. Then the next year, a judge ruled him to be mentally incompetent to stand trial and instead committed him to a psychiatric facility. Once he was released from the psychiatric facility, he did plead guilty, but again, the charges were downgraded to misdemeanors, which allowed him to continue to own firearms. Again, I don't understand how this was downgraded, for one, especially in the face of him being declared mentally unfit to stand trial. This person clearly should not have been allowed to own a firearm.
Well, and it appears that depending on sort of what the actual ruling there was, and it's unclear what that adjudication was with regard to his mental health, he may actually have been prohibited from possessing a firearm because he was, under federal law, adjudicated mentally ill and ordered to inpatient mental health treatment. So unless his rights were restored in Oklahoma, which is unclear whether that happened, he may well have already been prohibited. But I agree that what's concerning here is this man had a history of committing violent crimes that should have been charged as felonies that were then dropped down. Now, that's okay for that to happen in situations where, you know, this is someone's first offense. They don't have a history of violence. We don't want to throw the book at people necessarily every single time that they commit, their first offense. But this is an individual where this kept happening. And after a certain amount of time, you have to say, why are we continuing to treat this as though it's his first offense? He has a history of doing this. And we need to take those types of histories, those patterns of violent behavior seriously.
Right, because you're right. It's not just these two incidents either. In 2008, he was charged with aggravated assault in Texas. That was later downgraded to a misdemeanor deadly conduct charge. In 2011, an ex-wife had said that he had mental problems, and another ex-wife of his in Oklahoma filed a protective order against him because he was a violent, paranoid person. She says this is a quote, with a long history of assault and battery with and without firearms. This was not an isolated incident. This is a pattern of behavior. And I think the lesson here is twofold. The people who are calling for gun control need to understand that if the laws on our books were enforced, it would actually prevent people who shouldn't have guns from having guns. It doesn't matter if we put more laws on the books, which are going to hamper law-abiding citizens from being able to exercise their Second Amendment rights. If we're not enforcing these laws, then it's only going to be law-abiding citizens who are hurt by this, and people who are criminals or who intend to commit crimes. If those laws aren't enforced, they're not going to make any difference, and that individual or that criminal is going to be able to hurt other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, by the time we get to New Jersey, to see that New Jersey, again, will enable this man to plead down to just another misdemeanor again, given at this point a decade of violent action after violent action after violent action. That really tells us that one of our main focuses when it comes to preventing gun-related deaths is to focus on ensuring that individuals who have these patterns of behaviors are being treated as though they are serious offenders, because they are. And if we don't step in and say we're not going to allow this to happen, we're going to continue to see these violent patterns escalate into more and more violent behaviors that in this case, unfortunately, led to the deaths of 2 innocent people.
Right. And the last point that I would make is this: the second lesson here is that even if we have laws on the book, we clearly still need the capacity for self-defense, because this man should not have been allowed to own a firearm. He should have been prohibited from owning a firearm, not just forfeiting the supposedly defective shotgun that he had in New Jersey back in the day. But he should have been in prison, as you mentioned, in New Jersey. And so we, the people, the law-abiding people, we must have the capacity to defend ourselves. We must have our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, to protect ourselves and our families, especially in places of worship, because unfortunately the government cannot be trusted to fully protect us and keep us alive in the face of evil people like this man. Amy, I appreciate your analysis as usual. Thank you for being on the show.